So I think 'cause my background was an academic one. I was a professor for about 10 years before we spun the company out of my research. And I guess I would have naively felt that the best technology would win. I felt that if you have a very significant technical advantage over your competitors, that would not inevitably, more often than not, lead to a successful company and a successful product. I found that not to be the case. And we spent, not to say that we would have done it differently, because I think that it's very important to have a good product and good technology, but it caused us to massively underestimate the operational requirements and the commercial requirements, and understanding the sales process and understanding all of those parts are just, if not more important than having the technology in place. So I think, whilst to do anything differently, I think learning how to sell earlier, and I don't mean this in a trying to make money for the company standpoint, but just it's an important cog that turns the system, is like, what is the thing that kind of flips a hospital or an organization from, well, this would be a really nice problem for us to solve, to like, we are going to invest substantial amount of time and resources into getting this fixed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Conor McGinn, who is a co-founder and CEO at Akara. Conor, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Why don't we start off, Conor, with you just telling everyone a little bit more about Akara. When we had our first conversation, I was mesmerized by everything that you guys are doing, and I find it so exciting. So why don't we start off there?
Sure. So we're an AI healthcare company. Essentially, we help hospitals reclaim time they're losing through preventable inefficiencies in their operating rooms. So essentially, we build a range of different technologies, some of which are hardware devices. So we have robots and sensors that we install in the operating rooms. And these can free up staff from data collection, as well as things like cleaning. But we also help on the analytics side of things. So we can identify kind of root causes of what are causing inefficiencies in the operating rooms. And already we've been able to improve things like scheduling. We've been able to improve some aspects around documentation compliance. And essentially what we're trying to do is pick up the pieces for what people don't really do well. We try to take manual processes that are just inefficient, and free up staff. So a lot of the time staff don't like doing these tasks, that they win if we can add value. But moreover, operating rooms are among the most expensive parts of the hospital. And if we can improve their efficiency there, the hospital health benefits too, because they're doing more surgeries.
That's awesome. And I would love for you to explain the side of the documentation, because when we were having that conversation, you gave me such a detailed dive of how everything works, the mechanisms. I believe you said it was the sensors. I'm not sure what term you use, but tell everyone a little bit more about that and how exciting that is too.
Sure. Well, like, I think AI is changing a lot of things, and one of the key areas where we're seeing in healthcare working is in digital scribes. So, like, doctors now are taking voice notes, and that's saving them a lot of time from writing down their notes they otherwise would. And there's another task that's done that's similar in the operating room, where people have to write down the certain times that key events of the surgery take place. So they would traditionally be when the patient arrives, when the surgery begins, when the surgery ends, and anesthesia. There's a bunch of other timestamps that are collected. The challenge is that the people who record these are often, nursing staff that are focusing on the patient side of things. And very often, we see that there's errors in the times that they've written down. As a result, like, even though in the moment it doesn't seem like 5 minutes doesn't mean much, if over time you're gathering this data and you're trying to use it to inform decision making around scheduling, it's really, really hard to do. What we've been able to do is have kind of sensors that sit in the operating room. What's interesting about our sensors over some of the traditional technology, which would be camera based, is that we're only looking at thermal heat signatures. So this is beneficial because it doesn't identify either the patient or the surgeon. So it's really, really good from a de-identification standpoint. But from that data, we're able to very accurately deduce exactly what happened and when. And this is really helpful because not only, as I kind of alluded to, kind of improve certain aspects of coordinating and managing the valuable surgical time, but it actually allows for us to deduce really helpful metrics that allows charge nurses and other kind of operating room supervisors and leaders to manage workflow, to say, like, was yesterday a good day? And you can look at our data and go, well, like, on average, the turnaround time was 15 minutes. Like, there was one occasion where it was 45 minutes. Like, let's look into that and let's see if we can identify things that we could do better the next time. And what we start to see happening is that this data empowers key people on the ground. So it's very frustrating when you're working in a hospital or a place, and you have an anecdotal feeling about something, but it's really hard to push the change because you just don't have any data to back it up.
Yeah.
And what we're able to do is kind of equip these people with the knowledge and the insights and the data necessary, to improve things and focus on the things that matter most.
That's awesome. And I think even an extra layer that if I say anything incorrectly here, please correct me. But even an extra layer beyond that is, yes, the documentation happens. Everything is very precise. There is the security or the privacy side of things that gets taken care of. But on top of all those things, it also gets fed into the right places. The right data gets fed into the right places automatically. So there is no need for the nurses or anyone else to note it down and then go and then input all that information in the right places. It's all done. And then it's just a matter of being able to analyze that data to get the results or optimize, just as you were saying.
You're right. And I think you're pointing to actually a much bigger problem in healthcare. And it's how data is often siloed. So like, you'd be surprised at how much data gets captured in the hospital, but oftentimes it can be really hard to access. It can be buried in different parts of the electronic health system. You can a lot of the time the only data that gets collected is raw data. So you might know the time that things happened, but and be able to make the inference about taking the difference between when the patient entered the room and when the surgery started, like that's a calculation someone would need to do. And being able to take all of the data, aggregate it together, and analyze it in a kind of a really fundamental sense, so that you can make it accessible to people who are not experts and haven't received a huge amount of training, is something that no one's cracked yet. And that's really kind of where we see our technical roadmap going. Right now, we're really good at being able to automate the process of capturing and just writing down those timestamps. For us, one of the key things that's next is there a way in which we can manage this in a knowledge base that, we can use machine learning and AI to kind of aggregate together and make it accessible to anyone who wants it.
And that's so cool. It's cool because there are so many layers that can be improved. And so many times the data that gets overflown, it just overwhelms people instead of being able to have actionable insights that can be taken or actionable steps that can be taken from that data. But having that clarity allows everything to be much more frictionless, much smoother. It doesn't create obstacles. It gets rid of those obstacles, as opposed to just the overwhelm that a general person or a general practitioner or the nurses, whoever is involved in that entire process, would usually go through.
You're right, and you use the word overwhelming. Like, it overwhelmed us. And that was what happened. Like, we came in, and like our starting point when we started to look at kind of time and understanding what was going on in the operating room, it came from the fact that we wanted to show that we could clean faster. And what we found was that like the data that existed was often missing important piece of information, was often missing important context. And we realized fundamentally that the EHR, which is usually where these things are stored, is fundamentally badly suited for this task. Like, the EHR was generally designed to manage patient health information. Like, it's not designed to tell you how many people were in a surgery at a certain time. It's not designed to notify people when they're needed in a room. It's not intended to understand the nuances between one surgical team and another surgical team. The days of the week, which days of the week are more busy because the traffic in LA is bad. Like, the point is that what we're trying to do is aggregate all of the data that sits outside of the health record as best we can, and understand it. And build a system or a knowledge base that understands it in a fundamental sense that it's almost like having an expert in that room or in that department that has 10 years of being in that room and understands exactly what happens there. And being able to ask them the question. We found that each hospital has this person that knows everything. And it's not written down, it's not codified. It's just this wise man or woman in the corner that has been there and seen it and done it. And everyone aspires to have that knowledge, but nobody knows how to extract it. And what we're trying to do is build a system that allows for that. And it's been a really interesting experience because everything we built has happened from the ground up, all of which it starts from us being overwhelmed. So we've tried to build it, block by block and piece by piece, starting with the basics. But now we're getting to the point where we understand what's going on in the room. Can we overlay cost information on that? Can we understand exactly what the consumable cost in that surgery was yesterday? Can we understand exactly how much revenue we're expected to generate from this? Can we understand exactly, the breakdown between does operating room one, the fact that it's slightly further away from the supply room, does that impact turnaround time at all? Like, these are the kind of nuances we can start to look into. And it sounds like it's like we're looking into it in too much detail, but operating rooms can run more than $100 a minute. Like, this is the race car of healthcare. It's the most
Right.
expensive part of hospital real estate. And like right now, the level of sophistication and how they're managed is quite low. And we're trying to change that.
Yeah, no, and it's a fair point that you bring up as well. As like, hey, it sounds like you're just doing too much, but these things are happening regardless. Like they're in the day to day, so you might as well have the understanding, having that clarity of how they are actually operating and how you can improve, as opposed to just leave it at there instead of looking deeper into it. It's like, no,
It's
it's being done regardless of the situation, so might as well
it,
be clear.
it's chaos. Like operating rooms are chaotic places. They're places where things rarely are on schedule. They require tons of different people with lots of different experiences and lots of different experiences and expertise. They require lots of different equipment. Like there's so many different factors that go into it. So it's a chaotic environment. And if you do what traditionally has been the case, and you just focus on solving one very small problem, then the point of failure won't be the thing that you're working on. It'll be something else. But
Mhm.
that won't matter because the end result will still be the same. You'll still lose that time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the bet that we've made and the conviction that we've developed is that like we stand the best chance of adding value if we work across the full stack. So if we understand like what are all the common operational things that can and do go wrong, and is there ways in which we can make our technology where needed add value in it? Most
Mhm.
hospitals we work with, they won't use all of the different components to what we're building, but we have the ability to identify where the challenge is and plug that hole where we need to. And the net result is that the problem we're solving for the hospital is a headache. It's understanding can we give you the data you need to understand your setting well, and can we equip you with the tools necessary to make better use of that space and make better use
Yeah.
of your teams?
Yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you for sharing all that, Connor. And I would love to also dive a little bit into the side of the vision that you have for the company, because when we first had our conversation, we had just a very brief mention of it. But after everything that you've just explained, to me, it all sounds super, super exciting. It also sounds very, very promising, especially in a world that is dealing with so many of these chaotic situations that can be facilitated by what you guys are providing. So talk to me a little bit more about the vision for the company, what you're looking towards in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years ahead.
Well, I guess like what kind of motivated me to get into this was growing up in Europe. I'm from Ireland, and we have some of the longest medical waiting lists in the world. And like what's happened, and this is a trend that we see in the US, we see it in a lot of the developed world, is that the rate in which we've been able to build hospitals and build medical capacity has not kept in pace with the population change. And so, whereas in the 1980s we might have had 9 hospital beds for every 1,000 people, now it's like 2.5 to 3. So our ability to be efficient has never been needed more than it is now, because we just don't have the capacity if we're not. And the challenge is that, or at least the opportunity, I mean, is that technology still is nascent in hospitals. We're still seeing the majority of tasks requiring a very significant degree of manual effort. And where technology is used, it's usually used in the clinical side of things, less so on the operational side. And so like what we've wanted to do, or at least what we've proposed to do, is like, can we build tools and we use the word tools because that's what they are. Like we're not replacing people, we're just making people
Mhm.
more effective.
Yeah.
And can we go after the things that add low value? Things like cleaning, things like, data collection, things like data analysis, where like a lot of hospitals don't have the benefit of having data science teams in place. But like in the advent of AI and machine learning, and like if we're in the business of collecting all this data, we can quite easily extend what we do to help analyze it. And can we form can we position ourselves to be a trusted partner for these hospitals, so that rather than trying for them to build new divisions around technology that they don't have experience or competence in doing, instead we become a natural partner for it to solve some of their problems. And we see ourselves as being highly complementary to hospitals as they start to expand and build new projects, because when you build a new hospital, there's that's the best time ever to embed this kind of technology.
Mm.
So we want to be part of that journey. We don't want to be considered in the traditional sense a vendor, where you sell them a piece of equipment and then you know in 5 years later come back and we'll sell you another piece. We want to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a service provider that just happens to have a big force amplifier that we can share.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely like a partner into what you're doing for that with them, for them, as opposed to just like, hey, get this thing and hope for the best. It's like, no, we want to be a part of your growth and how we can help you and talk through the process and get the feedback and all those things. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to highlight something that you said in there, as you were giving your thoughts, which is a very quick reframe that you gave to yourself there. You said the word challenge and you're like, actually the opportunity. I really love that because it's so interesting. So many people in entrepreneurship can just see a challenge after challenge after challenge. And sure, there are going to be challenges along the way. And something that I always like to highlight in here, which you will also be a victim of. So it's coming. But I think it's interesting that just having that different perspectives, like, yes, this is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. So many of the companies that I've spoken with here on the podcast, a lot of the leaders too, not all of them, but there's been a large number in which there is a conversation of a challenge, but there's never a conversation on how they can be opportunistic on the challenge. Yes, there's many things that we can't control and macroeconomics and politics and all these things, but how can you leverage a lot of these situations to increase the impact, but also make sure that people aren't running away from the problem? They can see what's the clarity that they can get from your solutions to whatever it might be that you solve. So I just wanted to highlight that reframe. It's really, really awesome.
Well, that's a really nice observation. I guess I didn't really think of it, but you're dead right. And I think that like usually challenges and opportunities come hand in hand in our line of work, because like we're focusing on it because it's a challenge, it's a problem. But the upside is the thing that's missed. Is like why is the juice worth the squeeze? And it's that opportunity on the back end of it. And like what we see is we see you know a lot of the people we serve or the people we work with in hospitals, like they're a massively underappreciated part of that workforce. And the opportunities for them to progress just don't exist. Again, cleaners being the obvious example. We see the opportunity for us to develop tools that give them opportunities for career development that doesn't exist. For me, that's a really big thing that we would like to be able to add in terms of value. In terms of the patient side of things, again, I've been on medical waiting lists for more than 2 years. The opportunity for me to be able to get treated when I needed to and not have to wait months in suffering, and I'm not unique in that respect,
Hmm.
especially in Europe. And then from the healthcare side, like we know that nearly 1 in 2 hospitals in the US is losing money. And we know that, operating rooms are the big revenue driver of the hospital. They can represent up to 70% of all of the hospital's income. They're a
Hmm.
complete outlier. Yeah, there's 2 hours of downtime that they could be reclaiming. So, I think we're focusing on an area that just it delivers wins across the board if we're successful. So it's
Yeah.
hard not to be excited by that potential. Although, if it was easy, someone would have done it by now. We know how hard it is. And again, we're equipped to solve it. We're convinced we will.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a case of finding the right partners on the journey and together we'll get there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that as well. But as I mentioned, I always ask about the challenges, and you're going to be a victim of this as well because I think it's always important to highlight when it comes to entrepreneurship. So, tell me a little bit more about those challenges. I think a frame that I like to have for this, in almost every single one of these conversations, is this: let's say you had a magic wand, Connor, and you could wave this wand and solve one challenge within the company that would allow you to hit all your client acquisition goals, all your revenue targets, anything that it might be when it comes to that growth side of the company. I know that so many times we have a million different priorities that we want to focus on and fires to put out, but one thing, wave that wand, one thing gets solved. It allows all the growth that you are striving for to happen. What's the thing you want to solve?
For me, the obvious one here would be the sales cycles, or the time it takes to go from first engagement with the potential partner and the actual time it takes for our technology to get in the door. That can be months, and like it's disappointing because like oftentimes we have buy-in from the right champion within like 1 or 2 meetings, but
Hmm.
there's so much procedural components that go in after that, whether it's getting clearance from IT, whether it's going through procurement reviews. There's just so many steps that it takes to get to the point where you can prove your value and your worth.
Hmm.
Again, that's just something you have to unfortunately accept in some respects.
Hmm.
But it's frustrating because you're seeing opportunities that if given the opportunity, you'd be able to go after a lot sooner. But unfortunately, that's just the way how it is in healthcare. It's understandable but frustrating.
Yeah, yeah, having to deal with the red tape for sure. It's another common pattern that I've heard is with so many conversations, some of the people that clients that we work with as well. But so many things that are out of our control, but always I encourage everyone, and I'll slap your own thing back at you right here. How that challenge can turn into an opportunity. and leveraging that as well. So always just
Yeah.
something to think of here.
Well, like I
But
think we've learned an important lesson from it. It's that like your technology, in order, because like someone has to go and put their neck out for you to propose you, because there's so much friction to get something new over the line. Like, you can't be just slightly better than the system they're currently using, or it'll fall flat. So it's been a forcing function for us to be able to really focus on what really moves the needle and what doesn't. And so in some respects, like if we're going to try and see the glass half full, that's been the purpose it served. I think the challenge we find ourselves in now is that we've spent, a very significant amount of time refining the product to the point where it's starting to really resonate, and like it addresses a lot of the concerns that they have about, some of the competitors that they've looked at in the past, or just some of the reservations they've had. While addressing, a number of clear wins if we can be successful, but in the same breath, the challenge is procedural, and you just have to kind of go with the process and look it up.
Yeah, for sure. That's usually sometimes how it goes. Connor, I have one final question for you here. Thank you so much for everything so far. And this question is actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So here's the question. You ready for it? What is something you wish you knew before you started that because you didn't know, you paid a heavy price for in business?
Oh, great question. So I think, because my background was an academic one, I was a professor for about 10 years before we spun the company out of my research. And I guess I would have naively felt that the best technology would win. I felt that if you have a very significant technical advantage over your competitors, that would not inevitably, but more often than not, lead to a successful company and a successful product. But I found that not to be the case. And we spent, not to say that we would have done it differently, because I think that it's very important to have a good product and good technology, but it caused us to massively underestimate the operational requirements and the commercial requirements, and understanding the sales process and understanding all of those parts are just, if not more important than having the technology in place. So I think if I was to do anything differently, I think learning how to sell earlier, and I don't mean this in a trying to make money for the company standpoint, but just it's an important cog that turns the system, is like, what is the thing that kind of flips a hospital or an organization from, well, this would be a really nice problem for us to solve, to like, we are going to invest substantial amount of time and resources into getting this fixed. And how can we connect with that during the product development life cycle, so that we can be the person they think of, if and when the time comes that we're ready to meet that need.
Yeah, exactly. Because then when you're having those conversations, one, the trust gets built, but then you show that clear value, you show that clear ROI, and it's like, oh, it actually makes sense for us to pursue this, as opposed to a nice to have. So like completely shifts the conversation, right?
Yeah. Like what was really interesting to us is how often people we speak to don't really care too much about the technology. They don't really care how the product works. They care what it does for them.
Exactly.
And they care how it makes their life better. And it's that piece that I think is often missed, or at least it was missed for us in the earlier days, because like we didn't have that perspective. We looked at it as academics are cursed to, as like, as a system, like there's this much, the cost of an infection is this much. This is the value of time, and whereas what we should have probably done early on is go, look, there's this surgeon who thinks that they could get their day finished in 6 hours, but they're there for 12 because there's all these other things going on. There's administrators who know they could use the space better, but they just don't have the data to be able to justify decisions they're making. And like viewing the world from their perspective and understanding, well, you can connect them with how the hospital works and how the budget works and how the staffing and all these other pieces work, and just understanding it at a system level, that then can help you build a go to market and a pricing strategy and all these other things that make sense.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And a final thing to highlight here before I leave you to get out of your hair, but it's interesting that I think that's one of the biggest lessons for almost anyone that dives into entrepreneurship as well. People sometimes could really care less about the how; they just really care about the outcome. What's in it for me? Like, how are you going to be able to bring that? So having that way to transfer the message, the right message, but the right proposition in the right way, that as you mentioned right now, to the client, makes a complete difference in the entire in the entire growth of the company and the success, but also the impact they're able to achieve as well. Connor, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible chat, so insightful. I've learned even more than than when we first had our conversation. So where should people go if they want to learn also a little bit more about you and a little bit more about Akara?
Thank you for having me, Janet. It's a pleasure to be here. If you're interested in learning more about us, follow us on LinkedIn or our website, akara.ai.
Everything will be down below here in the description if you do want to check those out. And if you're still listening to this conversation, you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Connor, thank you so much again.